except fat.
Call the number on your screen for our half-price special and your free weight loss, no-obligation consultation.
SCTV, we're coming through for you.
Good morning, at 9:30 a.m. precisely. The story we're going to cover this morning off the top is the dramatic, touching, very human story which developed over the weekend when, after a judge refused an injunction to stop the move of patients from Tranquille to Glendale in Victoria, the BCMHP stepped in an act of civil defiance and blockaded the ambulances going to pick up the patients. Here's Etmanski at dawn yesterday. These are the ambulances coming to Tranquille, and you'll meet Etmanski of the BCMHP in just one moment.
We're representing a group of people who have been involved in the plan for the residents from Tranquille to move into the community. We are here with parents who have sons and daughters and other relatives who have brothers and sisters who are scheduled to be moved today. We're supporting their wishes for their sons and daughters not to be moved from Tranquille to Glendale, but to be moved into the community. We are here to demonstrate in a public way our intention, and it is our intention to block the ambulances from going into Tranquille.
I've been advised to advise you that if this roadblock is not removed, there will be charges.
Well, we understand the consequences of our actions. Our intentions are today is to support the families who do not want their sons and daughters to be moved to Glendale Institution from this institution. We understand the consequences of what you just said.
You have no intention of moving then, eh?
No, we don't.
Okay, that's fine.
We have decided, because of our concern for the safety and well-being of our residents, to cancel this flight for today. We feel the situation here is unsafe, and we would be jeopardizing our residents if we tried to move them.
And in the studio this morning to explain his organization's situation is Etmanski, who is the Executive Director of the British Columbians for the Mentally Handicapped. Also on the program this morning will be, we taped her earlier, Grace McCarthy, the Minister of Human Resources responsible for the transfers. But first, after the break, Etmanski, British Columbians for the Mentally Handicapped Persons. After the break. Etmanski is Executive Director of the British Columbians for Mentally Handicapped Persons. Astonished at your brazen act of civil disobedience in this case, Mr. Etmanski, how can you justify that when a Supreme Court judge refused you an injunction, properly represented as you were by distinguished legal counsel, and out you go and blockade these kids who are being transferred to Victoria? How can you justify that?
Well, it's a very hard decision for our organization to make, Jack, and our organization in this case would involve not only the provincial organization of which I'm employed by, but also our 58 local associations for the mentally handicapped.
They were consulted before you decided to defy the move?
They have been consulted for the last year and a half on this particular issue, since March on this issue.
In other words, you decided if they were going to move them, you were going to blockade them and stop them?
Well, it wasn't just we. There were representatives of those very local associations for the mentally handicapped from all over the province.
Yeah, but you'd made that decision to actually physically stop the move if you could some time ago. Is that the point?
No, I was just responding to your concern that our local associations weren't involved. Since March, they have been actively involved in protesting this move with Mrs. McCarthy. They have sent letters in. They have offered to take responsibility for these individuals in the community. And after all, it's our local associations for the mentally handicapped, Jack, over the past 30 years who have been delivering the services, who have been pioneering the services to mentally handicapped. They have been quite intimately involved in this issue since March, when we first began to be worried that the promise of Mrs. McCarthy would change.
Let's leave Mrs. McCarthy the moment and get the news aspects out. Are you going to block Tranquille again to prevent further transfer of the other 50 patients?
I think if that would happen again, I think we'd have to seriously listen to the concerns of the families. We were there.
Now give me an answer. Are you going to block them again, or was this merely a token blockage from which you will now walk away with your heads held high?
Well, I don't think our heads are held high at all. In that sense, it was a very black day for handicapped people. If we are to block it again, it would have to be a decision made by our board and our executive in consultation, Jack, with the families who do not want their sons and daughters to go to that other
I
institution.
hate to see them being exploited on television. I mean, there's something gruesome about it.
Well, I don't agree with that interpretation. I don't think that they were exploited at all. They were there with us on
Did you have wheelchair cases especially at the site the other day for pictures?
No, the gentleman who was in the wheelchair that I saw in your opening clip is the brother of a woman who has been involved in this issue, who lives in Kingston. His mother and his sister were there. He would have been described as medically fragile if his family had not been able to care for him in the community, Jack, and he was there, and if your cameras and your interviewer had gone up to him, he would have clearly indicated his position, which was that it's a hell of a lot better for him to be in the community than to be in an institution. He has far more capabilities.
Agreed entirely that there are many, many cases which should have been out of the institutions long ago and not been in the institutions. I've been involved in individual cases myself. But of the 325 people at Tranquille,
yes,
are you still taking the position that not one of them need be in a chronic care, 24-hour supervised setting?
No, I think that the majority of them need to be in settings that are supervised on a 24-hour basis. There's absolutely no question
Well,
about
why
that.
are you objecting to Glendale?
Because Glendale is a large mass living arrangement where the routines provided by the staff there simply relate to the needs of the residents to be fed, to be clothed, and to be dressed. There's very little in the way of recreational
All right,
activities.
far be it from me to be a propagandist for social credit. Are there 278 in community resources now?
No, there's far more individuals who are mentally handicapped living in the community than there are in the institution.
That's right. In other
Yes.
words, McCarthy has kept a large part of her promise to move large numbers of them into community-based resources, as you call it.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. I don't believe we've seen the completion of that particular promise. There are still, as my understanding, there are still the majority of residents who are in Tranquille are still there. They haven't been moved into the community, but plans are underway for them. That's right. That's
You'll
right.
concede that she's planning to put 278 into community-based resources.
Close to that, yes.
Close
I mean,
to
that's
that. So out of 325, she's certainly got 250 on the go or about to be on the go.
Well, we're not certain of that. They're on the go, but then these other 50 people, Jack, that we're concerned about had their plans ready too. There were actually budgets in place for those individuals to move into the community, and all of a sudden, about a month and a half ago, the decision came down in a very high-handed manner, and it said, you can no longer go into the community, you must go into another institution.
Are there documents on each case?
Yes, there are. There are certainly documents that have been prepared by the staff at Tranquille who indicate clearly that those individuals can go into the community. I think that's a point that needs to be stressed, that the professionals at Tranquille employed by the Ministry of Human Resources, medical doctors, psychiatrists, social workers, healthcare workers, feel that all but one of those 55 individuals could live in the community. The line staff of the Ministry of Human Resources who work for Mrs. McCarthy in the community have been planning for them.
You're suggesting to me, therefore, that she's shuffling them out and hustling them out so that she can get in a faster stage to close down Tranquille, even if she is going to move them from Glendale into community-based homes.
I don't know that, Jack. I wish I knew what the reason were. I suspect that Mrs. McCarthy's concerns are very genuine.
I suspect of what miracles, getting this many moved already.
Well, they're not moved, and the only reason that we're close to being
How
able...
many are moved?
I
Out
think
of the 325, how many in community-based homes?
I wouldn't want to be quoted, but about 30 of them have been moved only in the last year and a half. The only reason, Jack, if I may, that there is a miracle associated with this is that our local associations for the mentally retarded around the province and their families have worked closely and cooperatively with MHR on this.
You know my fears about the community-based resource homes. I've seen community-based resource homes which have taken on heavy tasks and finished up as total disasters because of untrained people and improper supervision.
And I have those same
You
concerns.
know those
and
problems.
I think we could divide the community-based resources into two types. Those that are run by people for profit and those that are run by our non-profit local associations for the mentally retarded that are parent-based, parent-governed and parent-governed and directed. And that's the services that we had offered to Mrs. McCarthy for those 55 individuals. Our families, our parents, our organizations in the community said to Mrs. McCarthy in writing, said to their staff all along, in fact, had been planned, we will assume responsibility for these people. If money isn't a cost, if money is
money is not a cost, so she'll give you all the money you want.
No. If money is not a factor, that is, you give us the same amount of money that it would cost you to serve those people in Glendale, and we will serve you in the community.
I wouldn't do that if I were the minister.
Why not?
I don't think you'd be able to cope with it.
Well, we've been the ones who have been delivering
You've only
these
got,
services.
you tell me, how many of the 30 that you say are now out are actually in homes organized by your people?
I think most of them are in homes organized by our
30.
people.
Why aren't you making a fuss about the other ones then?
Well, the delay is that is only because the planning process is underway.
And
Those
it's
other
difficult, isn't it?
well,
To arrange and plan for the care of these people.
most certainly it
And
is.
you must have properly skilled people of incredible tenderness and dedication.
And we have the properly skilled people. And if we could talk about
What do you
tenderness,
mean you have the properly skilled
we have
people?
the properly skilled people
These
in
are
the
parents,
communities.
are they?
No, they are staff employed by the nonprofit associations for the mentally
How
retarded.
much money do you want from McCarthy to take over her job?
to take
Many
over.
millions.
Oh, I think that the same amount of money that Mrs. McCarthy has budgeted to serve those people in
Is
Glendale.
that what you want? You say, okay, Mrs. McCarthy, your budget for looking after these people is X much. Give us the money and we'll take them off your hands.
In effect, we are saying that we will assume responsibility. If Mrs. McCarthy is worried about having qualified staff,
Yeah.
about having dedicated staff, we can assure her that our associations will assume that
Say
responsibility.
the public
And-
would want more than assurances.
No, just a minute. The assurances, I think the public would be well confident in our ability, because they will see, the public around this province will see local associations for the mentally retarded already delivering services. But I'll tell you, there's another factor involved if those individuals would go into the communities. They would be reunited with their families. The mothers and fathers would be able
Well,
to...
some are coming down to be much closer to their families than they were in Tranquille.
Some are coming, but the majority are represented by families who live in the interior of the province, because
Some of
after
whom
all...
moved up there, but some are down
After
here.
all, Tranquille is a catchment institution for the interior.
Okay, Al, I must stop you there for a moment because of the Pope business. We're a little bit out of kilter this morning. I got to go to... Will I bring in Connie? I'll bring in Connie Clark of BCMHP, and then I'll go to Grace McCarthy, who's on tape, after the next break.
You want me out of here then?
No, no. Connie Clark is the president of the British Columbians for Mentally Handicapped Persons. And as you know, it's quite obvious, I'm not sold on your case.
I certainly can hear
So
that.
that means you haven't sold your case.
Well, Jack, one of the things that has been happening...
Oh, first of all, what about this civil disobedience, which grates on my teeth incredibly?
Well,
It's like penny farthing. You're
Yeah.
behaving like the BC Fed.
well, you have to understand that the people that were out there are not people who are, you know, in massing on demonstrations or anything else. These were families. There were doctors, lawyers, ministers, handicapped people that came from all around the province, from the Kootenays,
All with children involved.
some with children involved, some who were friends of theirs. And we're not, you know,
you gonna do it
those,
again?
for those people to perform an act of civil disobedience indicated there was something that was tragic happening, that they were at their last wits to know what to do about. Their court action had failed. All our efforts to negotiate
All right,
with the minister
Let
on
me
this had
try with
failed.
you, and I'm really trying to understand your case. 325 in Tranquille,
Yes.
right? And it's going to be closed by the end of this year, and the other two within 10 years,
That's
correct?
what we hope.
Now, how many of those people in Tranquille require 24-hour supervision?
Everyone at this
Where
point.
are they going to get 24-hour supervision outside of a place which doesn't have 3 shifts?
Well, it's just as easy to have 3 shifts in a house as it is in an institution. And many of the people who are now staff in Tranquille will be the staff in those houses in the community.
You're going to have 3 shift homes and community-based resources.
Well, there's many of those
Have
right
you got
now.
any now? 3 shifts?
Absolutely, certainly.
Many people, not that I'm counting the cost, but I know people do. How many people does it take to look after a community-based home with 2 in it? Are there any with 2 in it?
Yes.
What's the largest number?
Oh, often 4 is usually
Four.
what
And how many of
we,
the staff would you need to look after that?
well, none during the day because the people who live there go out to school or go to workshop
None
type
during the day?
settings. No, because you go out. You, no,
They're
you don't
all
stay
they're
home.
all mobile.
And if they're given some way to be mobile.
How many are
a
not
chair,
mobile at the moment?
the ones
Yeah.
in Tranquille right now, there's lots that have not been mobile up until very recently because they haven't been supplied with wheelchairs and so on. But
Can
they're
they be
certainly
made
having
mobile?
them. Yeah.
How much money do you want from Grace McCarthy to run your operations, the new operations?
We want what it would have cost for those services to be provided in Glendale.
And you just wanted to hand over the cash, and you'll take full responsibility, legal and every, for these people.
Well, the minister certainly has responsibility as a minister. I mean, she is contracting, as it were, with local associations, local service providers to buy a service for people for whom she has taken responsibility.
so
So
far-
she does have responsibility.
So far, you agree with Al that they're going to move 278 in the community-based homes.
Yes,
You're agreed now. You're happy in that.
absolutely.
How much money are you getting for these 278?
I don't have exact figures on all
12
those
million?
budgets.
5 million? 6 million?
What has been promised is that $13 million was made available for all the residents moving out of Tranquille this year. Now that's to develop new resources, to hire staff, and so
No,
on.
it's not all coming to you.
Well, none of it's coming to. I mean, we're an advocacy, a parent-based organization,
No, but
information
you'll set up a
group.
community-based home or approve it, and then the government will pay that a fee, like the old foster home,
That's
to run
right.
it.
That's right.
What's the average cost of running one of these homes? It used to be 60,000 for foster homes a month.
Well, the sort of midline figure that the budgets are being based on is about $130 a day. Now it varies. Some people it would be a little more, some a little less because their needs vary.
No chance of money making in this, is there? Now, I'm not being suspicious of you, but I've got my great suspicions of community-based homes where money's handed out in large numbers.
Absolutely, and
Very
and
suspicious.
for people who provide those services on, as we call non-proprietary homes, that is for profit, there certainly is an ability to make profit, and some of those people that we're speaking about, the ministry has chosen to contract with those people to provide service, and so we would continue to monitor, attempt to monitor.
Connie, I don't want you to think I'm being deliberately abrasive with you, just for the sake of supporting Grace McCarthy or whatnot. It's just that I've got a long knowledge of how things go wrong in this province when you go to community-based homes, whether it's Browndale camps or foster homes for delinquent children, and we
You
had
might-
great problems with them.
Things go wrong in the institution,
Exactly.
Jack.
You
There-
might want to talk about how difficult, impossible it is to monitor what goes on in an institution.
we went to
You
Glendale.
gotta go and walk around.
We went to Glendale to see the services that would be available to the people who were scheduled to be transferred there. We talked to the staff. They indicated honestly that they had only time to feed and clothe those individuals and care for their sanitary needs, and that was it. We know and we can assure you that if they went into the communities, they would get recreational programs, day programs,
Question.
plus their
Right
families.
now, you, in my opinion, unwisely blockaded the ambulance yesterday. But you've drawn great attention, so you're on this program this morning because you did that, so net effect is good. But are you telling me that you right now have got community-based homes into which you could put these people who've been approved and checked and are financially stable and won't rip off the system and will look after these kids properly? Because their parents can't look after them, can they?
In some cases, their parents will be reunited with their families, and while they can't care for them physically, will be there. But yes, there are homes available. In fact, Jack, and there's a point that needs to be understood, many of those people who are now being transferred to Glendale had plans in place for them. There were budgets attached. Homes were found. In Prince George, understand this, $30,000 was spent to modify a home to make it wheelchair accessible for a young woman who can no longer go there. This is a woman who dictates letters. She's unable to write, but who dictates letters to staff at Tranquille so that she can communicate with her relatives. She's anticipating going up to Prince George. The Prince George Association got money from the federal and the provincial government to renovate that home. Abruptly, a month and a half ago, it was no go. This woman must now go to another institution.
If I send a camera crew to that address in Prince George, will I see a house in which $30,000 has been spent, but
Yes.
the move stopped?
Yes.
That's right.
We'll get the details and give it to our intrepid news department. And I'll be back. I've got to use Grace now, and I won't get her on at all. I don't know what, the Pope stole half an hour of my time this morning, and I don't say that in any cafe manner. Don't go away after the break. Mrs. McCarthy, Minister of Human Resources, just how upset are you this morning by the blockading of Tranquille by this BCMHP, preventing your planned transfer of the 25 down to Glendale? How upset are you about this?
Well, I'm upset for the families because I think that they are being exploited. I think that they are having put on them a further burden that they don't need, and I think I'm upset for them. I don't know if you realize that this past weekend, in fact, this year has seen a transfer and the undergoing of the whole Tranquille Institution being phased right out. By the end of this year, we won't have that institution. That was our promise, that we would take away one of the three mental handicapped institutions in the province, and the three of them would be phased out within a decade of 1981, and this is the first phase. And I think it's a remarkable and a breakthrough for the mentally handicapped frankly, in North America.
Grace, I can understand that, and I well remember your promise that you would close down the three institutions within 10 years, Tranquille being your first target. But am I not correct that in the court hearing, Judge Meredith, Mr. Justice Meredith, refused an injunction to stop you from moving the patients, and yet in face of that injunction, out they go at dawn in the morning, and they stop the ambulances from going in to pick up the 25, correct?
I think that's an act of civil disobedience. On the Friday, the court said they would not interfere with the moving of the patients, and in the face of that, the road was closed. We were not going to take risks with medically fragile patients. As you know, that's been our first criteria, to take care of them. That has to be our only criteria.
Tell me, is that act of civil disobedience going to alter your plans to move the other 20 to Glendale, and when will you move them?
There are 55 in all that will be moved to Glendale. Of those 55, approximately 17 will be there temporarily, and then they will be moved into community resources. The rest are medically fragile to the point that they need 24-hour nursing care, they need medical supervision, they have multiple handicaps, they are severely and profoundly handicapped, and they will probably stay at Glendale, where they will get very good care. They have recreational facilities and programs for them equal to that of Tranquille, with a dedicated and caring staff. It is interesting to note, too, that some of the things that have been claimed, for example, that some of the parents are going to be far away from their families. You know, there are about 17 of these young people whose residences are in the Lower Mainland. They've had to travel to Kamloops all of these years.
But I thought that all 50 of the parents were supposed to be joined in the action in the court to try and get the injunction.
I don't believe, I couldn't give you the number of I think it was done on behalf of some of the parents, but I don't think they were all 50.
This guy Friedman says that the medical assessments were redone by the same people, and he seems to indicate that the second medical assessments were a bit of a phony. What do you say to Friedman?
Well, I'm disappointed that, and I don't consider the Ombudsman is an authority on medical advice. On a very short, a very quick assessment, which he took, it was about a couple of days on that case, and I don't think that he can in any way be an authority in that short a time. And I want to question the fact that it was the same people. There was some of the same team, but there was an additional, at least one additional doctor to that team on the reassessment that was done.
Well, now, what do they want you to do? They want you right now to move nobody until you find little mini hospitals wherever they want the mini hospitals. Is that what the BCMHP wants, in your opinion?
I think that's exactly what they want.
But there are a number.
And Glendale offers the service now. It offers the beds and the service now, and the professional supports and help that we need. And you see, Jack, really the crux of this dispute is what will you be able to move every single person into the community, or will you not? We have moved out of 325. We have moved three-quarters, at least more than three-quarters, 270 of those patients are going, those adults are going into community-based resources.
Now, let me get that clear. The 278 have gone into community-placed facilities. Is that right?
Or will be going by the end of the year. We have established a resource in small towns closer to their families, and we have established places for them to go all through the small units of mentally handicapped associations with their support and with their help.
Let me get this clear, Grace. These children, these adults, whatever age they are, cannot be kept by their own families. Their own families are not quite properly capable of looking after them. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. They have asked us to take care of them, and we've done so for very many years.
Now, is money a factor? Now, you will be accused of cheese paring, saving money on civil servant salaries, closing down Tranquille, and squiddling away the profits made off the backs of these mentally handicapped, retarded youngsters into your general revenue. Now, that will be one of the main charges made constantly against you. What do you say to that?
Jack, I have to say vehemently that that's not so. In fact, it's one of the great, I think, surprises of our time in recession that we're even undertaking the depopulation of the mental institutions. This is a much greater cost to take the adults that are there in Tranquille and put them into small individual resources throughout the province. This is a greater cost. And it's a greater cost in this year, but it will be a greater cost in years to come, each and every year.
Let me get this quite clear, though. There'll be a residue of the 55 of the balance who will be in chronic care for as long as they live.
But I wouldn't say, no, I wouldn't say that. I would say that if some of them improve and their medication and so on is under control and can be put into community-based resources, they all that are in a mental institution today, will have the opportunity to move out. Glendale does not have a closed door. They have been moving out patients from Glendale all through these past 4 years, where now we only have in all of the mental institutions approximately 5%. With the seizure of the Tranquille service, we'll have less than 5% of the total population in institutions, and that's a record in the whole of North America in terms of depopulation.
Grace, if I may call you that this morning, I have a concern which is partly related to my long-time experience with these kind of problems in British Columbia. I remember the gruesome, horrible days, and I don't want to go over them. I'm concerned that even some of your 278 will not get the proper care in these community-based resources. Now, are we going to have access to these places? Have you yet had to take anybody out? Because it's got to be a very special type of person looking after many of these seriously handicapped youngsters. I'm worried about the care in the community-based resources, to be honest.
Well, let me tell you that we have a system. We're doing it all the time. We have very many hundreds in community-based resources right now. That's something that's overlooked by everyone. It's already been done. It's already in existence. They're on a one-year contract, which is re-evaluated each year. It's monitored by our ministry. It's monitored. They have a board of directors. The families can monitor it. The associations can monitor it. They're well monitored, and they will be able to be close to their homes and closer to their homes so that they can be monitored even in a better way.
Okay, now just let me wrap it up now. So you've still got the balance to go to Glendale, a total of maybe about 50, right?
Approximately 55 have moved yesterday, and
All
there will
right.
be another 50 go to Glendale in the next.
I don't know yet if these people are going to blockade your Tranquille again, but do you plan to move, to bring back the plane to Kamloops today and move another load to Glendale?
Jack, there's no plan to bring the plane back today, but the patients that are there will be moved to Glendale in the next little while. We made it totally public, and because we wanted the families. Our concern is first for the patients, secondly for the families. We wanted the families to be very much assured.
Fair enough, Grace. I've got to finish there. But I shall be in close touch with you. And I'd say to anybody who's concerned about this matter, keep a very close eye on it. And if you're concerned about community-based treatment, let me know, as well as the Tranquille situation. My thanks to Grace McCarthy.
Thank you.
After the break. I'm going to take calls between now and the end of the program, but first of all, let me try and add up what I believe is the case of the BCMHP. One, that the whole matter is being rushed to meet an arbitrary deadline to close Tranquille. That's point number one. Point number two, that in fact the selection of those to go to Glendale is a reverse of previous medical decisions. And Etmanski might even tell me that somebody walked in the ward and said, who can stand and who can't stand? And those who couldn't stand went to Glendale, or are going to Glendale. Now, I'm not necessarily accepting that, but I want you to understand the bluntest aspect of his viewpoint. And what they seem to be saying is, look, give us your budget and we'll do the job. Now, I sometimes think the Ombudsman gets off the mark now and again. You know, he does a hell of a good job most of the time. But when he says to me, or he says in this report to John Noble, all but one, at most 3 of the 56 could be cared for in the community, I'm inclined to take that with a very large grain of salt. Now, convince me otherwise.
Well, if you read further in that particular statement, that is a quote of Dr. Friedman's of the staff at Tranquille themselves. Doctors, psychiatrists.
Haven't they since reversed their opinion on that?
Well, I don't believe so. These are the people that Mrs. McCarthy and her officials would rely upon for advice, and they told the Ombudsman in his investigation that all but one of those people could live in the community. I think that's as clear a statement on this issue as possible, is that it has nothing to do with their fragility, so-called. It has nothing to do with the severity of their handicap at all.
If they're in danger of dying, they should be in care of the health department.
Oh, I completely agree, and they're not in danger of dying.
Except, of course, so they may be physically fragile, but not necessarily medically fragile.
Exactly. They have physical handicaps, the way many people who are paraplegics or quadriplegics have. But, Jack, you know, you just made a point. The Ministry of Health would normally care for people who have medical needs. And the fact is that these individuals are still being cared for by the Ministry of Human Resources. And we know that there was a major bureaucratic discussion on this issue, and the Ministry of Health put their foot down. They said these people are not in need of our attention. They must remain with MHR. So even officials of MHR and officials of the Ministry of Health, I think, are fairly united in saying there are no medical needs of these individuals that could be not met in the
Something else
community.
I want to get quite clear. Woodlands is still in full-scale operation for those who are not able to care for themselves.
Well,
On the face of it, there are 800 in Woodlands
That's
who
right.
cannot go into the community, certainly at this moment. Is that correct?
no, they would need to have some plans done for them. They could go in the community.
800, but that's
right.
going to be closed within 10 years. The 3 institutions are Tranquille, closing at the end of the year, Woodlands 800, and Glendale, which has got how many beds? 125?
No, about 320.
About 320 beds. Now, one thing where neither you nor Grace, perhaps my lack of proper questioning hasn't brought it out, is a kind of count, you see. Now we're dealing with 55,
Yes.
of whom you blocked 20 yesterday. So we've got 325 in Tranquille. 278 are set for community resource homes somewhere in the province.
We hope so. We hope that they will not make
She
it.
says that, and the plans are made, but you tell me only 30 have actually gone.
Yes, but it takes time for the plans, so that will...
So you
Yeah.
accept that.
Yes, yes,
So that's 278 gone or going.
That's right.
Except that you tell me that in the Prince George case, after 30,000 federal and provincial money was allocated, chop chop, this woman is going to Glendale.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That's right.
And you can give me a name and hopefully an address that
Yes.
we can check on
Yes.
and get done. So what you're saying is that Grace McCarthy, to meet a tricky deadline, has made an arbitrary transfer of these people to Glendale to enable them to close Tranquille and get 55 out of Tranquille now. Is that right?
Well, it looks to me as if that's what it's shaping up to be. Mrs. McCarthy just made a statement that we're doing something unique in North America. I regret to say, Jack, that we may be doing something unique in North America, and that is having a mass stampede out of an institution without the proper programs available in the community. I think that they are conveniently relocating 60 people to make those numbers even less that they have to worry about.
And you'd prefer they had all stayed in Tranquille in its full operation and move out slowly a little bit at a time?
Yeah, I mean, the debate is not to close the institution or not. I think that one's long dead. We no longer keep handicapped people away. They're part of our community. The debate is how to close it, and we have to do it well.
Can every parent of every retarded or mentally handicapped person in the province expect that, and the ages go up to what, 40, 45?
Well, some of the people there are even older than that. The woman I told you about, I said was a young woman. Actually, she's in her 50s, the one in Prince George.
All right, can the relatives and friends of these people reasonably expect, at the vast cost involved, either way, institution or non-institution, to be located in the area which they choose?
No,
they can't.
Not you know, down the street, but
No.
the point is that many of those homes were already earmarked, like the home in Prince George, the homes in the Kootenays, homes here in the Surrey area, homes in the
Will there be
Okanagan.
any inspection staff, or do we, if as these go through, do we have to rely on you?
No, not on me, but you can rely on other parents and the officials who work for the local associations for the mentally retarded. That we have no ability to monitor the institutions, but we will have the ability to monitor our programs.
We'll start with a call from Tranquille. Oh, I just want to get this clear. You're not doing any more blockading until a decision is made by the board of directors.
Yes, I couldn't say that. We'd have to talk to our executive and board, yes.
Go ahead from Tranquille.
Yes, good morning.
Or should I say from Kamloops?
Kamloops.
Right.
I'm an employee of Tranquille School, and I'm concerned with the expertise of the people in the homes that they are opening up. I know of 2 residents already who have been placed into group homes that have not been able to function because of their bad habits, say, and they're going to Woodlands. They're being shipped down to Woodlands now.
Are you telling me there are 2 who have been put in community homes and have since been transferred to Woodlands?
They are in the process of being sent to Woodlands.
Do you know that for sure?
Yes, I do.
Have you got the names?
Yes, I do.
Have you got the community homes they went into?
No, I've got the names of the residents.
Yeah, but you're saying they were in community homes. Were these BCMHP community homes?
Yes, they were. I also know of a resident that has been
hold it.
Tranquille.
You also know what?
Know of a resident who is being returned to Tranquille because of his behavioral problems.
You mean they couldn't cope with them in community homes?
They can't.
Hold on. I want names from you now, because we're going to check this out if it's the last thing we do. What do you make of that? Have you had such cases?
I haven't heard of the 2 cases. I would assume he's referring to the fact that our Kamloops Association had to transfer 2 people from their home back into the institution. To the best of my knowledge, every person who's come out of Tranquille into the Kamloops Association homes are still there.
Except for 2.
Well, no, not even those 2. I think the point has to be made. Sure, if there was a slap-happy job done of planning for that individual, and if the staff weren't properly trained, then there may have been a failure, but I don't think it's the failure of the handicapped person. I think it's the failure
of the community-based home.
Or of the planning that was done by government officials.
Or shouldn't have been put in a community-based home.
No, not at all. Why blame the victim in that case? Why not, you know,
I don't think anybody's blaming the victim here.
Yes, we are.
I'm not blaming the victim.
Well, I think the gentleman is inferring that on the line.
No, are you inferring that it's the patient's fault?
No, I'm not. I'm concerned that the expertise of the staff manning the homes they won't be able to function with some of these residents.
Jack, the people who are being hired to work in the homes in the community are the same people who worked in the institution.
Not in all the homes.
Well, not in all the homes, because we have been able to find people who are as qualified, if not more qualified, but certainly a great proportion. I believe the Kamloops Association, for example, has hired as the director of their residential programs a former staff person of Tranquille. So we are able to rely on the expertise that exists in the institution. I don't see that as a problem.
Yeah, but you see, he's raised a very problem that kind of nags me at the back of my mind. They go into a community-based home, for some reason they don't respond, they can't cope, they need 24-hour diaper care or whatever it is they need, and they got to be put somewhere now.
They wouldn't need 24-hour diaper care. We could certainly deal with that in a community. I think the gentleman is referring to people who have behavior problems, who have different social behaviors than you or I, and that is a question of having good, understanding, competent staff. No question about that.
Okay, I want these names from you, so don't hang up on me. I'll take a break. So I was saying, Mr. Etmanski, you haven't provided the full story to the public. Now, this guy phones and he gives me names of three people who have been put into community homes in Kamloops, and 2 are now going to Woodlands, and 1 going back to Tranquille, and 1 of them has behavioral problems.
And I would say...
What happens when you move into community homes and you've got no institutions to put them? You've got to ship them back to Woodlands.
Only if you don't have the qualified staff in the community.
This man says, and I might as well front and center, that there are 6 patients in a home in Cherry Creek and only 2 staff working 12-hour shifts.
And you and
Is that possible?
It's possible, and you and I should be gravely concerned about that.
That's what I'm worried about.
But why use the institution as the only alternative to the improper licensing, to the improper standards and monitor for the community? We know that, no, the point is, we know the community is better for you and I, and for handicapped people, they should be entitled to the same community benefits. Why segregate them away in an institution as the alternatives? If we failed by not licensing people, giving proper staff, then we have to redo that job.
Moved, seconded, and carried unanimously. But I'm saying that right now, this man says there are 6 in a home in Cherry Creek with only 2 of a staff working 12-hour shifts.
Then I think we should, you and I have an obligation to investigate that right now and to make sure that that is corrected immediately.
Because that makes your community home plan intolerable.
No, not the community homes that we're developing. Our staff.
In other words, you don't know of the one at Cherry Creek?
No, not at all. It's not a member of our association. Most of the people in the community who are served by people who run for-profit homes.
Okay.
We're saying that the non-profit societies for the mentally retarded are the ones that you can rely on.
It's the only way to go.
Obviously.
The only way to go.
Obviously, and there's monitored. Other parents will be as anxious to see that other handicapped people as their own sons and daughters are well cared for.
That's something else we agree on, totally. Go ahead from Kelowna. Then I'll go up the line after that. Go ahead from Kelowna.
Good morning, Jack.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't like the name Mental Institution. It should be called the School for the Handicapped.
Oh, don't quibble about little...
Okay, I nursed in a hospital school in Ontario with almost 1,500 kids. And they started 8 years ago in putting the children from the moderately retarded...
Ma'am, we don't need history this morning. Have you a contribution on the BC problem, yes or no? No, you don't. Go ahead, please. That's you.
Well, I don't know if I've got a contribution or not, but I just wanted to know that, to ask this fellow here if he knows that there'll be no woodland soon either.
No, 10 years is the outside limit for woodlands. Is that not right, Al?
Yes, I understand that. And I think that what we have to do, ma'am, is to work as hard as we can to make sure that if it is closed, that it's done as appropriately as possible, and that people aren't shuffled to another institution the way this government is appearing to do it for those 55.
Because you're accusing them now of shuffling this 55 if they get them there quickly as a matter of their convenience to help meet a deadline and not on proper medical and community home possibilities.
Their own doctors don't want it, and Ministry of Health doesn't want it, their parents don't want it, the plans were available in the community. Why are they doing it other than to meet their outrageous deadline?
Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I'm a little confused. It sounds to me as if almost all of the patients that were there have already been placed according to the wishes of the parental society.
Well, our plans have been made for almost all of them to be placed, with which
a remainder of 50-some-odd very severe cases. Is that right, sir?
Well...
Is it right?
There's 55 of them. They have a combination of disabilities, both physical and mental. Some of them.
Severe cases, are they?
Severe cases.
Some of them are severe, some aren't. They have different disabilities.
Have the rest of them been looked after according to your liking?
We don't know yet. The plans are being made, and we hope they go according to what the intentions are, but they're not in the community yet. They're still in the planning stage.
Well, you said there are 30 out.
About 30 have gone out, that's right.
Jack, it sounds to me as if you've got a bunch of people that have been placed as best as can be done, and that you've got a bunch of very well-intentioned, and I do not say this in a disparaging manner, sir, but I think you're a bunch of very, very well-meant amateurs. Thank you.
Thank you. You're bound to get that now and again. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Webster?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to talk to your guest for a moment. I've been watching with interest, and I would like to know how the decisions are made at the government level. I look at your guest, and I see a gentleman that apparently has got quite an interest in this particular situation. I wonder if at 5 o'clock or whenever the ministers go home, if they don't just leave the problem with somebody else. And I'd like an observation from your guest as to how he feels that these decisions are made, and if there's really an ongoing interest.
Well, I think that's a kind of...
be the minister responsible for this situation much longer.
That's a kind of pointless discussion at the moment. I know perfectly well that John Noble, the Deputy Minister, has sweated long and hard, maybe right or maybe wrong, over this problem, and doesn't go home at 5 o'clock at night and switch off. And I think we'd agree there.
I would agree. I think that we have just a major difference in opinion, and a government that is forced into an unrealistic timeline. We're only hoping that they can delay it so we can do this properly.
Go ahead from Castlegar.
Yes, I'm the parent of one of those people that was moved from Tranquille yesterday.
Where to? Cherry Creek or somewhere? No, you're talking about the
Glendale.
One of the 55, yes.
One of the 5 that was removed yesterday.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm one of the parents. I was there with the protest people, and while I was there, my son was physically removed in a van. And they were put in a van and driven along a very bumpy road at a speed of up to 60 kilometers an hour. And is this the way that Grace McCarthy's people treat someone who is designated to be medically fragile?
Was there an allegation of any form of unkind treatment done deliberately yesterday?
It was a very unfortunate situation where those 5 people were snuck through a back road that's more like a cow pasture road. And I know the woman, I recognize her voice.
But they had to, because the clothes were down there, the preparations had been made. You were the one that stopped the smooth transfer.
At the time we were in talking to the manager of Tranquille
just got time to ask her, are you happy, how old is your child?
My child is 24 years old.
Are you happy that he's in Glendale?
No, I'm not.
Would you rather have...
back here in the community, as Grace McCarthy had promised.
Thank you, ma'am. I must leave it there, Al.
I think that woman said it all, Jack. That's a parent.
We'll follow this closely. We'll check these particular stories, and I'll be back after the break. Well, that's back in business. I've got to find out today if it's right that there are 6 in a home in Cherry Creek with only 2 staff working 12-hour shifts. Maybe perfectly adequate for all I know. This is a matter which we must watch and try and get to the clinical bottom of it. Because everybody wants to do the very best they can, of course, for people who are mentally handicapped. I haven't time to tell you about tomorrow, but I'll be here for sure. And tomorrow I'll be 9 a.m. precisely.